Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. PDP NWC names Umar Damagum in acting capacity as Iochia Ayu steps down as PDP chairman. Humza Yousaf voted in as Scotland's 6th First Minister after being named SNP leader yesterday. Ex-student kills 6 people at a private Christian school in the U.S. city of Nashville. My name is Damilola Raphael. We begin with some Nigerian stories. The National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has appointed Umar Damagum to oversee the affairs of the party in acting capacity. National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Debo Ologunagba, announced this at a press conference today at the party's secretariat. Until his PDP National Chairman, was the PDP National Deputy Chairman, The embattled National Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Iochia Ayu, had earlier stepped aside from his position. It will be recalled that Ayu was suspended during the week by the Similarly, some Wike has expressed satisfaction over the ouster of the national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Iochia Ayu. This comes barely 2 days after the executive committee of the PDP in Igero Ward, Boko local government area of Benue State, suspended the former chairman with immediate effect. Moments after Mr. Ayu's removal was made public, Governor Wike celebrated the defeat at the commissioning of the Trans-Kalabari Road Phase 1, the Gema local government area of Rivers State. He stated that all those who were plotting evil against him and his allies are now the ones suffering it. The governor, who is a member of the G5, refused to support the presidential candidate of the party, Atiku Abubakar, in the presidential election over the failure of Mr. Ayu to resign as PDP chairman.
See how I prepare them now. I don't know that we are suffering it now. I say nobody can suspend him, but today he has packed out from the office. We have an acting chairman now. I told him, you will go. Whether you like it or not, you will go. Those lawyers telling you that the world has no power to suspend you is only neck. Then you don't understand. When you came, it was the world that suspended secondary, is it not? And you went and took office, is it not? It is not that you know that's only neck. Let me tell you, since they have not told you, the court has struck off that section of our constitution to say that neck only. So you don't know what. And PDP did not even appeal the judgment. So forget their own is God. You must be wasting your time. We are ready to battle. We are ready for the battle. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not from Benue, but I have interest. That interest that Ayu must go. And I'm going to carry it in May 29 when I leave office.
To news outside Nigeria, the African Union has appealed for calm and called for dialogue following opposition protests in Kenya that have turned violent and left 3 people dead since last week. Opposition leader Raila Odinga called for demonstrations to protest against the high cost of living and what he calls electoral justice after last year's election. In a statement, AU chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat urged stakeholders to exercise calm and engage in dialogue to address any differences. He said the conduct of elections last year was successful and the outcome confirmed by the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has condemned the invasion of the property of the former president Uhuru Kenyatta. Mr. Odinga, who is an ally of Mr. Kenyatta, said the violence witnessed in various spots were carried out by goons hired by the government.
Honorable members, members of the fourth estate. This is now a follow-up to what Martha has already stated. Ruto's hands are all over this violence. When Azimio La Umoja called for protests in line with Article 37 of our Constitution, we never envisaged that in desperation, the state will respond by hiring goons and mercenaries to rain terror on peaceful and innocent Kenyans. We know no law that allows Mr. William Ruto and Mr. Rigathi Gachagua to order Kenyans to invade other people's lands and businesses in the name of quelling legitimate, peaceful, and constitutional protests.
Still in East Africa, Paul Rusesabagina, who was portrayed as a hero in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda, has arrived in Qatar after he was released from prison in Rwanda. A White House official said Mr. Rusesabagina left Rwanda yesterday and had arrived in the Qatari capital, Doha, this morning. U.S. National Security Council coordinator John Kirby said he will soon be making his way back to the United States. Talks brokered by Qatar led to his release from prison on Friday, 2 years after he was sentenced to 25 years for terrorism. Moving on, pirates attacked and boarded a Danish-owned ship Monjasa in the Gulf of Guinea on Saturday, and all communications channels with the vessel are down. A spokesperson for the shipping company disclosed this today, revealing that all 16 crew members sought refuge in the safe room on board the Monjasa reformer vessel. The Liberian-flagged oil and chemical tanker, which was sitting idle, was attacked about 140 nautical miles west of the Republic of the Congo's Port Point Noah. The vessel is operated by Dubai-based Montec Ship Management, which is owned by Monjasa. Montec reported the incident to a maritime cooperation center operated by the British and French navies to maintain safety in the Gulf of Guinea. In the United Kingdom, Hamza Yousaf has just been voted in at Holyrood as Scotland's sixth First Minister, having been named as the SNP's new leader yesterday. His name will be passed to King Charles, who will sign the royal warrant to formally appoint him. Mr. Yousaf, while addressing the Scottish Parliament, said he hopes to work together with members of the chamber to deliver a better government. This comes after Nicola Sturgeon officially tendered her resignation as Scotland's First Minister in a letter to the King. Ms. Sturgeon, who was Scotland's longest-serving First Minister, had last month announced that she would stand down once a successor was appointed. Ms. Sturgeon, after writing her resignation letter, left her Bute House residence for the final time.
I will be having words. The generosity of comments that have been made matches the spirit of the remarks that were made by Donald Dewar 24 years ago when he became Scotland's First Minister. Donald Dewar emphasised, and I quote, the common aims that we share across this chamber of giving people a better life and a better future. The government I lead will dedicate itself very much to those aims, and I hope to work with colleagues across the chamber in doing so. This is a proud day for me, a proud day for my family, and I can hear my 3-year-old speaking and waving to me from the chamber. I'm only on my second page, darling. There's a little bit more to come. It is a really proud day for me and my family. I hope it's also a proud day for Scotland, as it speaks to our values as a country, as I stand here as the first ever Muslim to lead a Western democratic nation.
Meanwhile, the terrorism threat level in Northern Ireland has been raised from substantial to severe, meaning an attack is highly likely. The move, based on an MI5 intelligence assessment, follows a rise in dissident Republican activity, including a recent gun attack on the top police officer. It reverses a downgrade in Northern Ireland's terror threat level last March, its first change for 12 years. The decision was announced by Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Hughton Harris. MI5, the UK's security service, is believed to review the threat level every 6 months the terrorism threat level remains substantial in the rest of the UK, meaning an attack is a strong possibility. The Ulster Unionist Party, UUP, leader Doug Beattie, reacting to the announcement, called for vigilance.
We should all be concerned that the threat level in Northern Ireland has gone from substantial to severe, and we must all be vigilant against this. The reality is there are people in our society, in all of our communities, who are intent on dragging us back to the bad days of violence on our streets and attacks on people in their homes and at their places of work. It's incumbent on us to not allow them to do this, and we can do that by supporting our police force in all that they do to stop violence re-emerging. And I hope the police use everything that is at their disposal to make sure those men of violence who are still living within our communities are held to account and ultimately put behind bars.
Britain and Poland will build 2 temporary villages in western and central Ukraine to provide housing for those forced from their homes by Russia's Beg your pardon, I'll take that report again. To the Russia-Ukraine war, Britain and Poland will build 2 temporary villages in western and central Ukraine to provide housing for those forced from their homes by Russia. Downing Street made this known today, pledging £10 million in funding. Almost 118,000 Ukrainians have been hosted by British families as part of the government's response to Russia's February 2022 invasion. But some are finding it increasingly difficult to get permanent housing. Britain's government said the villages in Lviv in western Ukraine and Poltava in central Ukraine would be able to house more than 700 people, a fraction of the millions either displaced in Ukraine or who have fled the country. Elsewhere in Europe, large-scale protests are being held in several French towns and cities against the government's pension reforms amid concerns that there will be further violence similar to scenes witnessed last week. The Paris demonstrations started from the east of the city, heading to Place de la Nation. While some protesters clashed with police in Nantes, barricade has been erected at a tram crossing, and demonstrators have also blocked access roads to the city. There have also been traffic jams spanning several kilometers in the northwestern city of Rennes, where demonstrators blocked the ring road and a car was set on fire. Clashes was also reported in the western city of Rouen, while other demonstrations in cities like Nice and Bordeaux were reported to be largely peaceful so far. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905. Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
You're welcome back. In the U.S., the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department has released body cam footage of officers encountering the Covenant School shooter. An ex-student of the school has this morning killed 6 people, including 3 children and 3 staff in the city of Nashville, Tennessee. The police stated that 3 of the victims were pupils aged 9 or under, with police naming them as Evelyn Dykholz, Harley Scruggs, and William Keeney. Police said the suspect was a 28-year-old named who identified as transgender, adding that the head of the school, Catherine Coons, was killed during the incident. Since the shooting, President Joe Biden has renewed calls for Congress to take action on gun violence. President Joe Biden calls the shooting a family's worst nightmare. In another
Judy in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, Ben and I have been doing this our whole careers, it seems, and it's just it's sick. You know, we're still gathering the facts of what happened and why, and we do know that as of now, there are a number of people who did not make it, including children. And it's heartbreaking. Family's worst nightmare. And I want to commend the police who responded incredibly swiftly within minutes and the danger. We're monitoring the situation really closely, Ben, as you know, and we have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart, ripping the soul of this nation, ripping at the very soul of the nation. And we have to do more to protect our schools so they aren't turned into prisons. You know, the shooter in this situation reportedly had 2 assault weapons and a pistol, 2 AK-47. So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban.
In another development, at least 39 people died after a fire at a migrant facility in Mexico's Ciudad Juarez, the most populous city in the Mexican city of Chihuahua, near the U.S. border. The authorities said the fire at the office of the National Migration Institute occurred after they picked up about 71 migrants from the streets of the city. The cause of the fire, all the victims' nationalities have not been released by the authorities. Volunteer rescue workers put the figure of deceased at 39, plus many more injured. Elsewhere, at least 20 people have been killed after a bus carrying pilgrims hit a bridge, overturned and burst into flames in southwestern Saudi Arabia. The incident took place yesterday in the southern province of Asil, bordering Yemen. It comes during the first week of Ramadan, a busy time for the Umrah pilgrimage and just months before millions of Muslims are expected to make the annual Hajj pilgrimage. According to state-affiliated Al-Akhbariyya channel, preliminary information revealed that the number of deaths in the accident has reached 20 and the total number of injuries was approximately 29. It said the victims had different nationalities but did not mention them or provide a breakdown. The channel said the bus had car trouble without specifying the exact issue with the vehicle. And still in the Middle East, 3 people have been arrested as part of an ongoing probe after far-right groups were filmed attacking Palestinian citizens of Israel who were passing by pro-government protests in Jerusalem. According to reports, one man was savagely beaten during the attacks yesterday evening at the end of a day of nationwide protests against government plans to alter Israel's judiciary. The largest protests by both camps took place in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, prompting fears of possible violence between the two sides. Reports and videos shared on social media suggested that right-wing protesters in Jerusalem accosted drivers during their rallies. A video shared on social media showed a large crowd of what seems to be demonstrators and security forces rushing into a petrol station in Jerusalem. In Asia, former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou has said people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are ethnically Chinese and share the same ancestor as he starts a historic visit to mainland China. Mr. Ma, in office from 2008 to 2016, is the first former or current Taiwanese president to visit China since the defeated Republic of China government fled to Taiwan in 1949 at the end of a civil war with the communists. He is visiting amid heightened tension as Beijing uses political and military means to try and pressure democratically governed Taiwan into accepting Chinese sovereignty. Mr. Ma, in the eastern Chinese city of Nanjing at the Sun Yat-sen Mausoleum today, said people on both sides of the strait are Chinese people and are both descendants of the Yan and Yellow emperors. Meanwhile, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has called on his country's scientists to expand production of weapon-grade nuclear materials and build more powerful weapons. Mr. Kim's latest calls comes ahead of a United States Navy carrier strike group's scheduled arrival in South Korea today. State media, Korean Central News Agency, reported that Mr. Kim, in a briefing with officials from the Nuclear Weapons Institute, said Pyongyang must be prepared to use its nuclear weapons anytime and anywhere. Kim called on his officials to expand on a far-sighted way the production of weapon-grade nuclear materials for thoroughly implementing the plan on increasing nuclear arsenals exponentially. North Korea last year declared itself an irreversible nuclear power, and Kim recently called for an exponential increase in weapons production, including tactical nuclear weapons. In other news, Russian oil sales to India surged more than 22-fold last year as European buyers turned to other markets following the conflict in Ukraine. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak made this known, adding that most of the country's energy resources were redirected to markets of friendly countries. Mr. Novak said energy revenues accounted for 42% of Russia's federal budget in 2022, and that the country's energy industry was sustainable despite the challenges faced by Western sanctions. Russia, a major producer and key ally of the OPEC oil cartel, cut crude production by 500,000 barrels per day this month in response to the Western sanctions. In the meantime, U.S. regulators are seeking to ban the world's largest crypto trading platform, Binance, alleging that the firm has been operating in the country illegally. The lawsuit from the Commodity Futures Trading Commission said the firm failed to register properly with the U.S. authorities. It accused Binance of breaking numerous U.S. financial laws, including rules intended to thwart money laundering. Binance, however, defended its practices, stating that it had made significant investments to ensure that users in the U.S. were not active on the platform including blocking users identified as American citizens or residents and those who had a U.S. mobile number. Founded in 2017, the company is now the world's largest centralized exchange for digital assets, claiming more than 100 million users globally. It is led by Chinese-born Canadian billionaire Changpeng Zhao. And talking sports, England striker Harry Kane has said scoring 100 goals for his country is not out of the question. The 29-year-old became England's all-time top scorer with 54 goals when he converted a penalty in Thursday's Euro 2024 qualifying 2-1 victory in Italy. He added his 55th in 82 appearances when he scored in a 2-0 win against Ukraine on Sunday. The Tottenham forward said getting 100 will be tough for sure, but he will never count out anything, noting that he was still fit and strong. England will play Malta and North Macedonia in June in their next two Euro 2024 qualifiers. And before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. The National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has appointed Umar Damagum to oversee the affairs of the party in acting capacity. Hamza Yusuf has just been voted in at Holyrood as Scotland's sixth First Minister, having been named as the SNP's new leader yesterday. The Metropolitan Nashville Police Department has released bodycam footage of officers encountering the Covenant School shooter that killed 6 persons in the U.S. city of Nashville. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Thanking you indeed for watching Spring Global. I am Damilola Raphael. Do have a restful evening.